purpose of this video is to introduce you to Morphdom and live updating your client-side view. The assumed knowledge is that you understand what bundling and browserify is, and you've used Hyperscript a little bit, which is the templating language. So the minimal setup that we've got here, I've installed all these modules already, is I've installed Hyperscript and Morphdom, which is what we're going to be learning. I've also included Budo and ES2040. So if you haven't seen those before, Budo is a really minimal prototyping tool, which basically, as you can see up here in the start script, you can say, Budo, could you take this index.js file, please? And can you serve that up on port 4000? And, oh, by the way, just live update everything. So let's look what I've got. I've got in my index.js file, I've got a console log, just to prove that Budo is logging into the browser. And I've made a message div and put some text in it saying Budo is live, and then told it to append that to the DOM. When I spin up Budo, this is what you see. You can see it's browserifying in the background. So Budo includes browserify. And then in the browser, what we see is, it's appending that to the DOM. So this might seem a little bit magical, and it is. What's going on is that it's bundling that index.js and then just assuming that we want to stick that inside a sort of generic HTML page. So there's the script. We'd normally call this bundle.js. And this has also got some fancy stuff where it's live reloading. So if I come back over here and change this text, you'll see it auto-reloaded over there. So that's some of the basic technology. What else have we got here? So we've also specified some configuration for browserify. We've told it to use a transform called ES2040, and this just allows us to use some of the basic ES6 syntax, and and to guarantee that things like fedora, arrows, and consts will be usable by and compatible in all the browsers. So over here, you can see I'm using const. We'd have problems if we didn't use that ES2040. Cool. So let's start using Hyperscript instead of just manual text. So const maybe we'll make a sort of generic to-do app. So we'll have our to-dos, and it'll take a list of to-dos. So we're going to expect that to be an array. And what do we want to do? Let's go. We'll just make the simplest possible thing to start with before we get to over the top. I might call this with a capital T because it's going to be something which we use to create some to-dos. So my lowercase to-dos are going to be like an instance of to-dos. I'm actually not going to put any array in because we're not using that value yet. Sorry, what am I doing? to-dos is that, and then let's append those to-dos to the page. Cool. So now let's layer this up and actually give it an array. No changes there. What we actually want to do in here now is take our list of to-dos and map over them. Actually, maybe we don't want a div, we want an unordered list. We're going to map over those, and for each to-do in our list, what we're going to, an individual to-do is, we're going to call a to-do, and we're going to map that to, maybe we'll spread this over a couple of lines just to make it a little bit easier to read. We're going to map that to an H element, which is a list item, and it has just the to-do in it. We need to return from that because we've got a multi-line fat arrow function. So let's go through what's happening here. I've got this kind of this to-do list constructor, and I used a capital T to denote that I'm going to be generating a list using that. And it's taking in a list of to-dos, or a to-dos array. And with each of the with that list, it's creating a top level unordered list element, and then mapping over each of the to-dos in the array and generating an li, one of these, and putting the to-do content in there. So that's pretty sweet. What are we going to do now? Let's extract this array out into a state. I'm using let because we might want to change the state later. Rar. And I've broken it. Syntax missing. There we go. So far this isn't particularly exciting. What we're going to do now is let's track whether we've completed each of these items. So we'll do something pretty unfancy to start with. Each of our to-dos might need to get a little bit more complicated. So we're going to have a description. And a done state. I'll make this one true and just see if we can render sort of some different things for each one. And I've probably missed another character somewhere. Here we go. Cool. So now each of these to-dos that's being iterated over or mapped over up here, we need to change this a little bit because it's not just a raw piece of text. This to-do is now, and up here is actually an object which has both a description and a done state. So this will be to-do.description. Great. But we want to render whether it's done or not. So How should we do that? Let's include a class. So const custom class, and the class is going to be set based on what the to-do done state is. So if the to-do done state is true, then the class is going to be done. And if it's not, let's just leave it as empty. So this is a ternary. If you haven't used a ternary, recommend you go and have a read about them. Typo. And to add that class, we go like this. Class, custom class. Now this won't quite work. Actually, this is a little bit dangerous because class is a special word in JavaScript. So we have to use the class name keyword. Cool, so how do we check if that's done anything? Well, we go in and have a look here. You can see that the invoicing traject has been marked with a class done. But we don't have a style sheet yet, so maybe let's do that now. So style.css, and we want to mark done with, let's see if I can remember my CSS. What's the strike through one? We'll just go underline. No. Sorry, this is embarrassing. Line through, by the looks of it. Great. So at the moment that actually won't be served, and that's because Budo only respects our index.js at the moment, but that's fairly easy to fix. We can just go Budo, can you also serve up some CSS, and it's going to be called style.css. Hopefully this works. We might need to restart our Budo server because we've added a new file and a new configuration. Great. So now we've got a state where, let's just review what we've done. We have this state which has a list of to-dos, and each to-do is an object with a description and a done state, which is either true or false. We have a to-do template, which we pass a list into. So in our case, we're passing in the state, all of the to-dos, and we are mapping over those, and for each one of those we're creating a list item, but we're determining what the custom class is going to be before each one of for each one of those. Now I'm just going to pause a moment and refactor this a little bit. So this might be starting to feel a little bit dense. So I'm going to make actually a little mini template which just handles this list item here. So to make a to-do, we receive a to-do. Let's call it to-do item. And that's basically just all of that code in there. So when we receive a to-do item, that. Now this simplifies down to this. So for each of the to-do items in our list of to-dos, just build a new line item, and our line item logic is all just encapsulated here. We can tidy this up and even a little bit further. I'm quite a fan of what's called destructuring in ES6. So we can say, actually, I'm going to want the description and the done state. I'm going to define new variables, and could you just go ahead and pull those out of the to-do item? And so that means we can, where we've got description, to-do item description down here, we can just refer to that as description. And same here with done. Cool, so that's working. Okay, we might want to now make this a little bit fancier. What about if we want to make this interactive? Like, imagine actually nothing on this to-do list is done yet, so everything is false, but I'd like to tick things off. So I want to click on those and have them sort of scored through. Well, to do this we need to add Morphdom. So let's add Morphdom in a really sort of simple way to start with, and then build up to how to add handling of clicks. Okay, so I'm gonna just copy this state and make a new state. And in this state, let's imagine that this one here has been changed to true. So what we're going to do is be morphing the view from using this state into using this state. So in the same way that we've got a list of the first set of to-dos, we're going to have a new set of to-dos, const new to-dos. This is like the newly rendered view, and it's going to use the to-dos template, and it's going to take in the new state, the to-dos from that. And now we need to morph between those, so we go morph, could you change the to-dos item into the new to-dos? Hopefully that's right. Yeah. So that was, it's hard to see actually whether that's morphing. So what we're going to do, I'll just wrap this inside a set timeout. So set timeout is a way of causing a delay, basically. So set timeout, what it does is it takes a function and it takes the time that you want to wait before you call that function. So we are gonna just chuck that morph code inside that timeout. 1, 2, and it changed. Okay, so morph is now changing the state. Sorry, it's not changing the state. We've got two states, and we're saying there are two different views. There's the first to-dos view, and then there's the new to-dos view. And we're saying, Morphdom, could you change the first view that got added to the page, just here? Could you go and find that, please, and swap that for the new to-dos view? So that's probably the simplest implementation of using Morphdom I can think of, but we don't really want to do that. We want to do that on a particular click. So what we're going to do is, I guess we'll build up to that. So we need to teach basically each of these list items to know how to watch for a click. So I'm noticing that this file's getting a little bit, could get a little bit annoying because we're scrolling up and down it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and extract those out into a template view. So we're going to call it TODOS.js. We'll stick with that capitalization for the thing that's going to be constructing things. Constructing our view. What have I missed? I need to restart Morphdom because there's new files here. I think I know. Nope. So I'm not getting an error message. Reference H is not defined. I see. So H is no longer used in this index file. It's used over here. Great. So what we're going to want is we're going to want to add a feature which is like when we click something, when we click one of these list items, something happens. So on click, we want to mark it as done. So let's just check that that works by making a function here called markDone. It's a function, doesn't take anything in, and it's just going to do like console.log done. Cool. Now, notice that no matter how many times I click this, it's just sort of a generic done. So how do we know what it was that was done? Maybe we could go by the to-do item name, but that's actually not going to be unique enough. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to use a feature of map, which is map. When you do a map, you can provide a function which uses 2 arguments, and what that does is it goes through each item in this array, and it puts that item into that first element, first argument. And the second argument, it gives the index of the position in that array, and in that way we can print out where it is on the list. So like let's demonstrate how that works. Sorry, jumping over the show a little bit. Is that error? Just checking I got the right number of brackets or parentheses. Cool. So this takes a to-do item and an index. Oh, right, my template string down here. So I was midway through using a template string. And I want to put cool. So we've got now, you can see the index. And because we've passed the index into the to-do item, we can now say on click, here's a function and I'd like you to mark done the item which has this particular index. So now this takes an index. Cool. So when we click this, it now knows which one we're clicking. So that's pretty cool. Noticed another thing which we could dry up a little bit with our code. This map up here is actually a little bit redundant. It's saying with each of these, for each of the to-do items, take a to-do and an index and pass that to a function. Just call it with to-do and index. You can actually do this. And I might have broken it. Cool. Nope. There we go. It's trapping which one we've clicked. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we've got this idea of a mark done, and we're using Hyperscript to not only mark the class, but also add a function which we can call when a list item is clicked. And I've also done a thing where we've got a slightly more dynamic name, which now includes that index just for us to keep an eye on what they are. Just messing around with some indenting to make this a little bit more readable maybe. So there are the three arguments that Hyperscript is taking. What type of tag is this? What are the options that you're passing in? And what is the content? And we're using template strings to print out this sweet format over here. And we've still got that delay of 2 seconds before it gets marked across, so maybe we'll go back and fix that now. Now, what's interesting is that this isn't, we can't update the state from here, so what we're going to want to do is, it's a little bit confusing to get your head around the first time perhaps, but we're going to want to, when we click this one, we're going to want to say, well, for that index, like for 0, we've bought the eggs, could we actually now change this state up here? This is item or to do 0. I want to change that state there to true. So let's drop this new state here, and hang on to some of that. And what we're going to do is pull this mark done function over into this file over here, where it's going to be able to modify the state. So when we mark something as done, we have an index. So let's just keep the log in there for the moment. But we're also going to want to go const new state. This is where it gets a little bit annoying. What's the easiest way to do this? We basically want to take that index, and based on that, let's just do it this way. State dot todos and it's going to be of the index that one, the done state, mark that as true now. So in the case of the eggs, if 0 comes in here, we're going to go state into the to-dos, get the first one, which is the 0 index, go to the done part of its properties and change that to true. And actually, let's put this code in here now. So like, as we mark done, we're essentially making a new to-dos visualization. We want to take into account that the fact that we just changed this state. So we're going to use the to-dos template and take the, it's not going to be the new state, it's just actually going to be the state because we modified the state directly. We're going to take the to-dos out of that and hope it morphs. So, this isn't quite linked to the clicking yet, but maybe let's just let's immediately call this just to prove that it works for ourselves. Okay, so we tried to mark 0 done, and it immediately crossed the eggs off. Let's change this to 1. We're expecting that when we save, it's going to go and immediately mark the invoice traject as done. Cool. So that's encouraging. Our mark done function is updating the state. But we don't want to call it here. We want to call it on the click of a list item. So how's that going to work? Well, we need to basically pass this markdown function into the to-dos template, and you can, the way I sort of think about this is you're setting up the view, but you're sort of like giving it a remote control, or like you might think about the detonation trigger on some TNT. You're giving it a control. Note that we haven't called it here, this is just the function. So the difference is, like, if you called it immediately, that would immediately mark that entry is done, and it maybe just sort of confuses the interface a bit. But we can pass that down, and so when that arrives, let's just call it the click handler. So there's the click handler, it's going to come in here. And I think we're actually going to have to undo this nice bit of refactoring I did. So to-dos is going to take a couple of things. So we're going to map each to-do. And I'm going to break this out onto a couple of lines because it's getting a little bit big. And each of those ones we want to return a to-do item. Oh, it's actually going to be mapping. We want to call the to-do template, and we want to give the to-do template several things. We want to give it the actual individual to-do, what number or index it was on that list, and we want to pass the click handler further down. So we can give each of these ones a particular trigger. Okay, so this is going to be receiving a to-do item, an index, and a click handler. So down here on click, what we want to do is actually just use the click handler, which is going to be markdown that we've been passed in, and say on click, hey, could you actually just run that click handler now and pass in the index of whatever particular item this is right now. So let's have a look. Great. Great. Okay, so let's review what our thinking was there. Remember we started out with the on-click teaching these list items to be able to be clicked, and we just started out by putting a function called markDone down here, and it just output which element it was being clicked, and that was great. But then I was suggesting that if we wanted to actually modify the state of the item being clicked, we might need to do that modification over here. So I pulled markDone over here, and you could still give it an index, and you recall I just sort of built this up piece by piece by immediately trying to call it to prove that it would work. So here what we're doing is we're digging into the state up here and modifying it directly to mark a particular item as done. And then, what am I doing? And then, that's right, we're rendering a new template. And then we're saying, Morphdom, hey, could you just update the bits that need updating? So this is kind of neat. You can watch this happening in the DOM as we click it. So, boom, you saw those little bits sort of flash up as we were updating it. But now that we have this markDone function in here, it makes it harder to call it in the individual list item or the individual to-do. So we passed this function to our template builder so that it basically has a copy that gives it remote control where it can trigger changes in the state. So we made that a second argument that the template takes. And I've called it click handler just to kind of keep your thinking flexible, because you could actually put anything in here. You could teach this, you could use this to-do template really generically now and say, just whenever you handle it, do whatever, and it could be like send an email or SMS me or something. And we are handing down this click handler to an individual to-do. And then finally down here in the on-click, we're saying when it's clicked, could you run this particular thing here, which is click handler, give the click handler your index. This could be a little bit tidier, but I'm fairly happy with that. Yeah, I think I'm going to tidy this up a little bit, because you'll notice that we're sort of repeating ourselves quite a lot. There's this index and click handler. Actually, we could say handle click. Like I might have broken it. What we got? Come and look at what Morphdom says about the errors. No errors, not encouraging. Could be I'm getting a little bit fancy with my ES6 notation. Nope. Whoa. Nope, looks like I've thoroughly broken it. Okay, I'm going to wind back. So I might have to spend a little bit of time to double check what I've done wrong there. Let's go on and like make this a toggle. It's kind of annoying because like I accidentally clicked one of these, say, and I might want to undo that. How are we going to do that? So here we're going to take advantage of the idea that we've actually passed in a generic click handler. And instead of mark done that we hand into the to-dos, it's going to be toggle done. So let's just, we can just reuse most of this. Toggling the done state. And instead of just it generically setting it to true, maybe let's get the current state. And we'll toggle it. So just use the bang in front of that, and that says not. Cool. I think we're going to leave it there for the moment.